Peace, peace. Uhuru. Amani Naguvu family. Welcome to We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. I am Ikemba Ajore, host of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. Here with my comrade.
Peace, everyone. This is Frank, host for the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series as part of WCC every Sunday at 1 p.m.
All right. So again, welcome. Appreciate everybody that's going to be tapping in, joining us for another podcast and book club. Today we're going to be looking at Malcolm X's Program for Action, or the Organization of Afro-American Unity's Program for Action, because there were several members of the organization along with Malcolm X. So we're going to take a look at that in the second part of our podcast and book club. In the first part, we're going to look at our weekly roundup. We'll do our weekly roundup as usual. Before we tap into that, definitely like and share. And if this is your first time tapping in with us, make sure you subscribe to the channel and still like and share after you subscribe. We are We Charge Colonialism, a Pan-African anti-colonial think tank fighting the colonial media and their narrative as it pertains to African people, and we have to fight even our own people who report stories from the lens of the colonizer. So we're coming from an African-centered perspective, resisting colonialism in all its forms. And this is one of the ways that we do this with our platform, our media platform. So with that being said, we're on the eve of Malcolm X's born day. Tomorrow, May 19th, will be Malcolm X Day. So make sure that you are looking for all the festivities and celebrations and recognition and commemorations of Malcolm X in your locality. I'm in Philadelphia, and we're going to be holding the 9th annual Malcolm X Day Festival tomorrow. Hope to see you there, Frank. I know you got the podcast. If you can slide through afterwards, man.
What time it is?
It's from 2 to 7. 2 to 7.
Two. Okay. I mean, right after I'm done, I can pop in.
All right. It's definitely going to be a powerful event. So there's things going on all weekend. I know Atlanta has their Malcolm X Day Festival going on today and tomorrow. New York, Harlem, they're going to be going to the burial ground of Malcolm X tomorrow. I seen Rochester, they're doing something for the weekend. Omaha. So all around, I saw something in Baltimore. They did something yesterday. They may also be doing something this weekend. So definitely tap in. We got to continue to uplift Malcolm, because Malcolm has a narrative they don't want to get out. They don't want Malcolm, the ideas of Malcolm, to get out. Maybe the name, because they can't deny the name. Because if you talk about civil rights and Dr. King, you have to talk about Malcolm X. So if they have to talk about him, they're going to try to control the narrative on Malcolm X. He was a changed man, all of those things. He was leaning more towards Dr. King, all of those narratives that we hear. So I'm definitely looking forward to tomorrow. And if you're in Philadelphia in the area, come on out to West Philly, 52nd and Pine. So we're gonna get into a weekly roundup, man. Hey, Frank, you're gonna love this, man. We're gonna talk about colonialism and neo-colonialism in its modern form today. So I was thinking, do I want to do the story first or the video? I'm gonna show the headline, and maybe I'll show the video next. So this is a recent story. The Biden administration, they're trying to ease the sanctions on this crook right here. And you might have heard of this guy, Dan Gertler. So if you look at this headline right here, make sure you guys can see that. All right, cool. So Dan Gertler, you may have heard it. I know there was some things going around on social media about this crook, but the White House, so seeking access to Congo's metals, White House aims to ease sanctions. A deal to allow the Israeli billionaire Dan Gertler to cash out his mining positions in the Democratic Republic of Congo has enraged human rights activists and some government officials, right? And so this story broke on May 16th, 2024. Actually, they've been talking about it for a while now, but this is one of the most recent articles on this right here. 3 years after Biden administration officials tightened sanctions on a billionaire Israeli mining executive for corrupt business practices in the Democratic Republic of Congo, they have reversed themselves and are offering the executive a deal they hope will bolster the supply of a metal vital to the electric vehicles. They ain't really worried about what's going on in Congo because we reported on what's going on in the Congo as far as the ethnic cleansing, the genocide that's taking place, U.S. involvement in that, as well as Rwanda's involvement in that exacerbating the situation there, where you have over 6 million, close to 7 million, probably more now, people who are displaced, right? Millions of people over the years losing their lives over these precious metals, right? And they're precious to the West. When we talk about precious metals, they're precious to the West because the West needs these metals to build their economies, right, and to build their wealth. So they need to continuously exploit the people there. So let me just show a video that was recent. I want to show this video. Keep in mind, this video is from 3 years ago, and after I show this, Frank, if you want to give your take on it, you can jump right in. But I'm gonna just share this. So this is from 3 years ago.
Well, someone in Washington seems to have been convinced by that. The Trump administration eased the sanctions on Gertler in a secret action in its last week in office. Now, a number of U.S. lawmakers and humanitarian organizations are calling on the Biden administration to restore those sanctions. Human Rights Watch said in a statement today, "We wish to respectfully request immediate action to reconsider, suspend, and reverse this decision. We believe this decision severely undermines U.S. global anti-corruption policies. The scale and nature of the corruption Gertler facilitated had a significant impact on the human rights of many Congolese." Well, joining us now for more is Jonathan Furziger, a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and a journalist who has followed the Gertler story. He speaks to us from Jerusalem. I don't know, Jonathan, if you're one of those journalists Dan Gertler was talking about, but he is certainly an intriguing figure. Many in the public don't even know him. He's one of the richest people in Israel. Just give us a background about this man.
Well, I had the opportunity to meet him and go to his house, meet his 12 kids, and he is quite an interesting figure. He is Haredi Orthodox, and like I said, he has 12 kids. He lives in Bnei Brak, the ultra-Orthodox city, and but he started out secular. He is son of, the grandson of the guy who founded the Israeli Diamond Exchange in Ramat Gan. And his father was a professional soccer player. At some point, I guess in his 20s, he found God. He also got into the family diamond business and started going to Africa. And it was there that he struck this friendship with Joseph Kabila. Kabila was the head of the army in Congo then, and then he went on to become president and gave Dan a monopoly over the diamond mines in this very, very poor African country.
Right.
Let me pause there. Let's see if you had any thoughts. I'll come back to this in a minute, but did you want to speak to anything, Frank?
Yeah, for real. A lot of things in there, man. Like, look, it baffled me. Like, it just make me weak. It just make my stomach to boil. Like, just want to vomit. You know, before I even go to the article, let me say something about the video. The narrator said his father was a soccer player and he was XYZ. And then he went to say he found God 20 years ago. So what is the God in there? To go to Africa to exploit Africans? Is that godly? That's how you find God? Look, sometimes you see the things until to the extent that you don't really know how to express it, because it's so annoying, and it gets you to a point of like being so angry you don't even know what to say. How can you find God? So you see, Africans, when these Europeans are saying God and we are saying God, it doesn't mean the same things. When they say God and we say God, it doesn't mean the same things. When we say amen and they say amen, it doesn't mean the same thing. When we say hallelujah and they say hallelujah, it does not mean the same things. When we say let us pray, and when they say let us pray, it doesn't mean the same things. When we say let us give thanks to God, and when this says let us give thanks to God, it does not mean the same things. When we say freedom and they say freedom, it does not mean the same things. Yeah. How can someone find God in the presence, in their happiness of exploiting Africa? How can someone find God in their happiness of dehumanizing, Africans, looting Africans? How can one find God in that manner? And let me go back to the article again. This is just about the video, but let me go back to the article. You see, Africans, the European, whether be it America or be it Europe, they are hypocrite. Look at the title of the article. The United States trying to ease. So does that mean they actually have the key to Africa? They can pluck, and they can unplug. They can start and they can cut it off. So to ease is not saying to stop. It's not saying to stop. To ease, it just means, finding a way to place it that will favor them. It's not going to ease it. What they are trying to say is that they are not going to do anything to stop the suffering of Africans. And first of all, it says what? To ease the Israelis, billionaires from what? Yeah. Taking the matter. It's not about the suffering of Congolese, of Africans. The dying, of Congolese, of Africans. But it's about the mineral resources. It's about the matter. Maybe the United States is not benefiting from it as the corrupt Israelis are benefiting from it, and they want to benefit from it. So they have to ease the sanction so that the government is not about easing the sanction on the Israeli who is exploiting the mineral resources. Either to ease a sanction on the government, to lay some kind of a sanction on the government where a government official, for example, might be able to travel, might be able to do business, with other entities, and those entities will only be American ally. So maybe these are some of the way they are trying to ease the sanction so that it will allow the Congolese government, to bring in American so that they all can exploit the resources. Because if it was about the millions of Congolese who are being displaced, the millions of Congolese who are dying on a daily basis, why would the United States say they want to ease the sanction? So that means they are going to put the sanction on Congo, to subjugate Congolese to step on the freedom on the neck of Congolese. So that means they are the ones supporting the terrorists, because you put the sanction on a nation so that that nation cannot survive, so that that nation cannot do anything. And by the way, let me say this to African. You know, when we call it this so-called European investor, how can someone you call investor come into your land, onto your continent, exploit your resources, take your resources to their continent, to their nation, to their economy, and then the resources they are exploiting and now benefit your continent and now benefit your nation, and you call that investor? These people have been on the African continent for centuries upon centuries and looting our resources, and we call them investor, but we cannot see any result of that investment. All we see are pop holes. All we see, okay, are holes where when there is rain and it causes flood, it causes damage, it causes landslide, it causes, how they call it, danger to the life of African. That's all we see. And we call these people an investment. No, the reality here is we Africans are the investor in these lands. Africans are the investor in Europe. Africans are the investor in America. Africans are the investor in Asia, because these people, we allow them to come and take our resources and then go and invest in their so they are not the investor. We are the investor, because the reason why it is now an investment in Africa, any investment that does not benefit you, neither the generation to come, it is not an investment. You see, our resources they exploit from the African continent, it is an investment on their land or in their continent or in their nation, because it benefits that current generation, and then it leaves worth for the next generation to come. But in Africa, the current generation are in captivity, are suffering. Then what is there for the next generation to come and see? And we call that investment. We call them investment. They are looter. They are not investor. We should know that clear.
No, absolutely, man. You touched on a lot of points, and I know a few people may be joining us late. We're basically building off of this article in a video that I had showed about what's the easing of the sanctions on Dan Gertler, and the video I showed was a video from 3 years ago, where this same Dan Gertler, there were sanctions placed on Dan Gertler. But the sanctions before Trump left office, the sanctions were removed, or they eased the sanctions. As you remember, they used the same language. This was 3 years ago. They were talking about easing the sanctions even in that video. So they're using the same language. We're playing the same game. And so the Biden administration, because of the pressure that was put on them by human rights activists, they put the sanctions back on Dan Gertler 3 years ago. This is after they had removed them, right? So they removed it, and then they quickly put it back on. But now Biden is talking about easing the sanctions now. And as you can see, the title of this article, a deal to allow the Israeli billionaire Dan Gertler to cash out his mining positions in the Democratic Republic of Congo has enraged human rights activists and some government officials. And it goes down. But basically what's happening is, like, they're trying to, the flow of the minerals, the cobalt, the coltan, they feel their easing of the sanctions, they feel the easing of the sanctions will allow the flow of these minerals to increase. And so basically America is losing out on money. They're losing out on wealth, or corporations are. And so they need to open back up that trade. Forget, and as Frank, as we've been talking about, forget what's happening in Congo, the death, the ethnic cleansing. It's all about them being able to exploit those resources for their own gain. So this is colonialism. This is what we're talking about. They don't give a damn about African people. When it comes to the resources and being able to enrich themselves, they could care less of the outcome or the effect or the impact that it has on the African population. This is why we need power. This is why we need to be able to determine the trade. Right now, we're not able to determine these things, and they're able to play us and use us like puppets. The other thing, they were talking about human rights violations. Dan Gertler, his exploits led to human rights violations. And I had put in the chat, but they didn't let it post. They rejected the comment. But I talk about how about the death? You're saying human rights violations, genocide, the genocide that's taking place as a result of his exploits in the Congo. See, when they're able to define the phenomenon, we don't get what's really taking place. We don't get the full picture or the extent of what is happening. And this is why we have to define it. Call it genocide. Africans must charge genocide. The other thing, I'm going to share the video. I'm not going to go back to it because of the sake of time, but I'll share the video. It's a short video if anybody want to watch the rest of it. It's talking about Dan Gertler. But I quickly, because of the we're short on time, we're going to move into Malcolm X's program. I just want to make these connections for you guys, and you can write names down and do further research. But I just want to make a quick point, so I'm gonna pull a few things up, and if you have anything you want to add, Frank, you can. First thing I want to go to, like Dan Gertler, he was exposed because of the Panama Papers that came out, and I'll pull this up on the Panama Papers, and y'all may be familiar with. If not, definitely look into the Panama Papers. And this is another thing: if the Panama Papers didn't come out, if it wasn't for this whistleblower, the corruption, the criminal activities of people like Dan Gertler and others will continue to happen. And you can't tell me that the colonial governments do not know that these things are happening. It's only because they were exposed that now they have to put the sanctions on Dan Gertler and others, and how they had the guy Benny Stein, how he had to go to jail because he was exposed in his dealings, right, in Guinea, which I'll get to in a minute. But check out the Panama Papers, 11.5 million leaked documents that was published beginning in 2016. This is the reason why Dan Gertler got exposed. But I just want to make this connection with Israel, because when we talk about this conflict with Palestine, a lot of people don't get it, man. Like, we have to cripple the Israeli government, man, the Zionists, because they are a threat to African people everywhere, to Black folks, whether you're on the continent, in the United States, in South America. They are a threat to us. Dan Gertler is a microcosm of what is happening around the world when it comes to the Israeli government and the Israeli elite. So we talk about Dan Gertler, who's an Israeli, and I'm gonna make a point with him. If we look, Mossack Fonseca, right? This law firm. I just want you to take notice. This guy, Jürgen Mossack, and you can see from his picture. But he's a German who moved. He's German born, moved to Panama, right? German Mossack, colonizer, right? German. Dan Gerbert. When you look at his family, I'll go to him in a second. But I want to go to this other guy, Jan Marsalek, who's another guy who's a fugitive. This guy is on the run. Jan Marsalek, you look at his background, is an Austrian fugitive businessman, right? Now let's go to quickly. I want to go to Dan Gertler, the guy that we're talking about, the Israeli, right? Now, when we go to Dan Gertler, let's look at this Israeli right here. Hold on. I just want to make a point with his background. Let me share this. So Dan Gertler is an Israeli billionaire. But when you look at his family, I'm gonna go down here. He's the grandson of Moshe. I'm not even gonna try. First president and co-founder of the Israeli Diamond Exchange. Right, his grandfather was the founder of the Israeli Diamond Exchange. But if you look at his background, they got it here. Maybe let me go to his father. I don't know if that's on the screen, but his grandfather was a Romanian Jewish immigrant to Israel, right? Migrated to Israel. And I'm gonna pull up Ben last one. But when you get caught up in this anti-Semitic stuff, these guys are not even Semites, man. These people are from Europe, man. You get caught up in this anti-Semitic stuff, and what's really happening is these people are anti-Semitic because the people of that land, when we're talking about the Palestinians are descendants of Semites. These are the real anti-Semites right here. Let me pull up Benny, and a lot of people might not like to hear it, but Benny Stein is an Israeli businessman. This guy was convicted for 5 years for his dealings in Guinea, working with the president's wife, right, to buy contracts to be able to gain a monopoly over the iron ore mines in Guinea. If you look at him and his background, Israeli, but he's Belgium, right? So this is what so don't get caught up in this anti-Semitic stuff. These people are not even Semites at the end of the day, but they're a real threat to Africa, and these are colonizers, and these are people that we're dealing with and have to deal with. And when it comes to this Palestinian conflict, it's bigger than just what's happening between the Palestinians and the Israeli government. The Israeli government is not just a threat to Palestine; they're a threat to African people wherever we are. So I just wanted to make that quick point, man. Definitely do some more research on these guys and the Panama Papers. But Frank, if you wanted to add anything before we
just 1 minute. You said something about the Semite, like these people are not they are not a Semite, right? I mean, the current, how they call it, white in or pink, not white, as the Bible described it. The Bible did not describe them as white, pink, red. All right. So the current red or white, let's say pink, okay, people in Asia, right? If we say they are the Israeli or they are the how they call it, Semite, right? Then that means all European are Semite, all white American are Semite, because white American came from Europe. The Israeli in Asia right now came from Europe. All these people came from Europe and settled to this black land. So if those people in Asia, they are Semite who came from Europe, then all European, all Italians, all of them, right? They are Semite. So I don't think white American, should be defending Israeli to say, oh, these are the Semite, right? So equally, so they are Semite. So my point here is they are not, because they all came from Europe, came and took the people from this land in America, killed them, looted them, brought them, how they call it, put vaccine in stuff and killed them, right? And then went to Asia and did the same thing. And look, let us remember that history keep repeating itself, right? What happened with the Indian, with the black in America? What happened with the people that was on our land in Asia? All right, it's the same thing that is going on today with Palestine and Gaza. And then we think and then we are not even going back to history. Like, wait a minute, what these people did in America, okay? What these people did in South Africa, all right? What these people did in Israel, that today they are there calling themselves the Israelites, right? It's the same thing they are doing again with the people of Palestine. So don't be surprised, for example, right? Don't be surprised. 20 or 15 years from now, and the land that is occupied by the Palestinians will no longer be occupied by the Palestinians. In fact, you will never see Palestinians on that land, but rather you will see European on that land. Don't be surprised if it happened in your time and you can't even remember history. And then the same European will come and say they own the land of Palestine. Their great parents were there. Their days that were there. They lived there. They founded our land. And then we come back and we not even remember history. Hey, I mean, it's the same thing going on. These people are carrying on mass genocide, just what they did in DRC Congo, and they are still doing. All right. It's the same thing they are doing to the people of Palestine, but want to change the narrative to say they are fighting Hamas. You know, why Hamas is fighting for the land, is fighting for their land, for their people, for their heritage, right? Why Hamas is fighting to die for the citizens of Palestine or for the people of Gaza. But mainstream media, on the other hand, will come out and say Hamas is the terrorist. So now, if Hamas do not fight Israel, who is going to fight Israel when Israelis are killing the people of Palestine? That's the question.
No doubt, man. So we're gonna move into a program though of action. And Malcolm X, and I think like this is still relevant. I was trying to pull up the program is in this text right here. Should have had this. I'm going to share. You guys should already have this, but I'm going to share this document. It's Malcolm X collected speeches. And you know, you guys can thank me for it. But we've used this text in the past too in the channel, so you may have it. But if this is your first time joining us, click on that, and also you can gain access to our folder, book club folder, using the link in the description. So again, tomorrow's Malcolm X Day. Hope you all find something to get into. If you're in the Philadelphia area, definitely make it out to West Philly, because we're going to be going hard to commemorate Malcolm X. All right, so I'm just going to share. I'm gonna just go to the website, but the program is in that link that I showed you. Can you hear me, Frank? My computer's moving slow.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So this was a program that Malcolm X was laying out in '64. It began establishing a program for action after he left the Nation of Islam, or was pushed out of the Nation of Islam, and he would form the Organization of Afro-American Unity, which was inspired during his trip overseas when he was in Africa, also traveling to Europe and in the what they call the Middle East. And while he was over in Africa, speaking to Nkrumah, and seeing the need too for an organization to represent the interests of Africans who were colonized in the United States of America overseas, where they can also, the same way that Africans, when they are outside of the continent of Africa and they're able to lobby for the rights, the human rights of Africans on the continent, whether they're coming from Ghana or Sierra Leone, and they may be in America or in Europe, and they're able to uplift the plight of Africans in Africa. He saw that Africans coming from the United States, when they're overseas, they could do the same thing. And at that time, he felt that there weren't African so-called Americans on the ground doing that. So the organization Afro-American Unity was kind of inspired out of that idea, but he will also form the organization here in the United States as well, to fight for the human rights of Africans colonized in America, and hopefully expand. His idea was to expand the OAAU throughout the Caribbean and throughout South America, where there was also a large presence of African people. So we're going to go over this program, and I think it's a program that can still be applied even in 2024, maybe updated a bit. And, you know, that I think that's a matter of perspective too, because I don't think that there's too much that needs to be changed, but maybe added to it. So we'll go into this program. Peace, everyone. Man, appreciate everybody for tapping in. And make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and like and share. And we're going to go right into this program. I'm trying to make the text bigger. It looked pretty small on that screen. Let me see. Oh man, hold on. Let me do something real quick. You want to add anything, Frank? Probably some time to share.
Yeah, why you doing that? Let me keep flowing while we still trying to figure out. Now, again, right? Let's do this. You know, even though most of us we already know that we have seen some evidence and things that, you know, the death of Malcolm X, you know, was as a result of the FBI involvement and so those things, or the CIA, right? But I do this, and then one thing I like about this channel, we do, you know, how do you call it? We discuss about the past and connect it to the present, right? Let's see here what Hoover said. Hoover said when they interviewed him, even though we have not seen video, but that's a story that goes on. When he was interviewed about the greatest threat to America, what would be the greatest threat? And he said Negro unity, you know, would be the greatest threat to the United States. Okay. The reality here is, right, we all know, right, he never said anything of like, you know, will be terrorist activities, will be like those things, right? But he said Negro unity, you know, African people coming together, recognizing their common differences, all right, understanding the plight of African overseas, and understanding the plight of African on the African continent. Like, we all are understanding the story, and we are not going by what or the European will go and tell Africans on the African continent about African in the diaspora, or what they will come and tell African in the diaspora about African on the African continent. You know, those things that are going to unite us, and he said it was a threat. Now, being a threat, as they have already defined it, okay, to the extent that they even called Dr. King a terrorist after he has recognized that the approach to which he took for freedom was not the right approach, and he recognized that the approach of Malcolm X, the like of Malcolm X and other, was the right approach, right? They call him terrorist. But before then, when he was saying the drain speech, before then, when he was saying, you know, let them march, before then, when he was saying, you know, turn your left cheeks and let it be slapped on your right cheeks, before then, right? They never call him terrorist. All right, they call him man of the advocate. All right, man of the advocate. But now, when he noticed that the approach of being called man of the advocate for humankind, right, was not a right approach or the right definition or the right identity for him, okay, for his people. And then when he said he felt that he led his people into burning fire by coming of that drain speech, okay, that did not fulfill, right, they call him a terrorist. The point here is, they have already said for Eastern African people, okay, unite is a threat to them. So when Malcolm X went on the African continent, all right, and united with the African on the African continent with chiefs, okay, with queens, with kings, with leaders, right? And he got the ancestral spirit. And when he came back, that was the kind of threat, because they knew this man came back with a different spirit, and they saw it when he came. He founded an organization that will unite all Black people, all African people in North and South America. What did they do? They already said it was a threat, right? they kill him. Now, in killing him, you might have seen or saw, okay, few group of black people who are involved. That is the thing that the European, the Westerner, they are so good at doing it. They know how to use few of us to get across what they want to get. For example, in current time, we see people like, how they call it, Horst Negro, Leonard Thomas Greenfield, a slave, right? We see people like that. We see people like Nana Akufo-Addo. We see people like Marcus Sada, right? Those are the people, all right, of our time, okay, who are being used against us. How black people, okay, of Malcolm X days, okay, were used against them. These are the people, like, for example, again, Lord Austin, right? The, how they call it, the Secretary of Defense or whatsoever for the AFRICOM, right? How can you use a colonial agenda, right, to go against your own people, fighting against your own freedom, all right, and fulfilling the agenda of colonialism, fulfilling the agenda of neo-colonialism, not in your favor, not in your people's favor, not in the race, not in the favor of your race, but against you into this time, and we see it going on.
Neo-colonialism. That's the problem. We're dealing with that in Philadelphia right now with the new mayor. Yeah, we got to realize that. So this is a lot better right here. So I know y'all can see this. We're gonna go through this as much as this program as we can and build on it. So this was supposed to have been laid out in Harlem, as you can see, February 15th. His house was firebombed. So February 21st. So it's like every time he was supposed to lay out this program, something happened, right? And it eventually led to him being assassinated before he was able to lay out the program to the Harlem audience, probably in its entirety. So we'll go through this program that somebody didn't want to get out. Pledging unity, promoting justice, transcending compromise. We Afro-Americans, people who originated in Africa. And, you know, right there, even starting off, you can see Malcolm, he was more, because Black was becoming the popular term in the 60s, particularly in the 60s. It was beginning to gain traction where people at one time didn't even want to be referred to as Black, right? Negro was the most popular term. But Malcolm was about to take us, and others, you know, like John Henry Clark and so forth, to get us to become, not that we didn't recognize it, but to begin to really identify ourselves, label ourselves, right? To make that connection with Africa and using the term Afro-American. So people who originated in Africa and now reside in America speak out against the slavery and oppression afflicted upon us by this racist power structure. We offer to downtrodden Afro-American people courses of action that will conquer oppression, release suffering, and convert meaningful struggle into meaningful action. Confident that our purpose will be achieved, we Afro-Americans from all walks of life make the following known. Having stated our determination, confidence, and resolve, the Organization of Afro-American Unity is hereby established on the 15th day of February 1965 in the city of New York. And the Organization of Afro-American Unity was under the umbrella of the Organization of African Unity. And there may not have been like a formal relationship, but Malcolm, he has stated that the Organization of African Unity was the parent group of, or parent organization of this organization that he had created, the OAAU. And so upon this establishment, the Afro-American people will launch a cultural revolution, which will provide the means for restoring our identity, that we might rejoin our brothers and sisters on the African continent, culturally, psychologically, economically, and share with them the sweet fruits of freedom from oppression and independence of racist governments, right? That restoration part he's going to get to again. The Organization of Afro-American Unity welcomes all persons of African origin to come together and dedicate their ideas, skills, and lives to free our people from oppression. Branches of the Organization of Afro-American Unity may be established by people of African descent, whether they may be and whatever their ideology, as long as they be descendants of Africa and dedicated to our one goal, freedom from oppression. The basic program of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, which is now being presented, can and will be modified by the membership, taking into consideration national, regional, and local conditions that require flexible treatment. The Organization of Afro-American Unity encourages active participation of each member, since we feel that each and every Afro-American has something to contribute to our freedom. Thus, each member will be encouraged to participate in the committee of his or her choice. 5, understanding the differences that have been created amongst us by our oppressors in order to keep us divided. The Organization of Afro-American Unity strives to ignore or submerge these artificial divisions by focusing our activities and our loyalties upon our one goal, freedom from oppression. And as I said before, like, all of that still relates. All of this is still relative to right now. And these are things that we need to be carrying out, because there's constant work to divide people of African descent and African people in general. So basic aims and objectives: self-determination. We assert that we Afro-Americans have the right to direct and control our lives, our history, and our future, rather than to have our destinies determined by American races. We are determined to rediscover our true African culture, which was crushed and hidden for over 400 years in order to enslave us and keep us enslaved up to today. We Afro-Americans, enslaved, oppressed, and denied by a society that proclaims itself the citadel of democracy, are determined to rediscover our history, promote the talents that are suppressed by our racist enslavers, renew the culture that was crushed by a slave government, and thereby to again become a free people. National unity, sincerely believing that the future of Afro-Americans is dependent upon our ability to unite our ideas, skills, organizations, and institutions. We, the Organization of Afro-American Unity, pledge to join hands and hearts with all people of African origin in a grand alliance by forgetting all the differences that the power structure has created to keep us divided and enslaved. We further pledge to strengthen our common bond and strive toward one goal, freedom from oppression. All right, one thing that's just like really is coming to mind too, listening to the program, is that Malcolm was raised first. That's that Garvey, man. You can hear that Garveyism come out in that program. And even on February the 16th, I believe, this is 5 days before his assassination, when he was speaking to a audience in New York. I believe he was in Harlem. And he mentioned Garvey, and he mentioned how no one since Garvey has attempted to bring African people from the different regions together as one people, whether they was in Jamaica, Haiti, or Brazil, right? He said no one since Garvey. And he was implying that his program was to do that. He was implying that that was the objective or mission of his program, is to bring these people together. Did you want to add anything before I continue?
Yeah, sure. You said something about race, right? Malcolm X was smart. Garvey, these are all people that came after us, and they were smart. Look, from the get-go, they knew and they understood that race comes first everywhere. Look at this. When you talk about Europe, right, or the West, they protect race than any other things. When it comes to them, they protect it. They protect their race. You go to China, the Chinese, no matter where they are, whether they are in China or any part of the world, they protect their race. I mean, anyone, right? Even the Indian, they protect their race when it comes to them. But when it comes to black people, right? Here it is a thing. The moment we want to talk about race, and they all talk about race, they all pretend they're race. Okay, they make sure there is no harm. Even like look at the police system in this country, right? It's race, it's based on race. But the moment African people, black people want to talk about race, the moment we want to talk about protecting our race, and that's the time the non-black will come and say, this is not about race. We are all humans. And it's about God kindness. It's about God loving. And it's about all doing things in harmony and doing things together. You know the reason why they come that way? They are Satan. They are coming to dilute your mind, to take you from your understanding of understanding race when they themselves, they are practicing race. Now, the reason why they are afraid to allow us to understand race is because we are the most populated race in the world. And not only that, we are the richest in the world. What are resources? What are ideology? What are knowledge? What are invention? All right? Or what are a fight or power, whatsoever it is. What are the capability to resist anything, right? To survive. We are the force. So if they allow us understand race and the way they understand race, if they allow us uphold race the way they uphold race, what I mean is they will have no place to exist. Because once that happens, you know what's going to happen? The Chinese, by all means, you already seen, the Chinese will come on the side of Africans. Other people will come on the side of Africans because we have everything. We are not people to depend on anyone. We dominate in anything and we have the resources. We have a continent that has.
Did I lose you? Oh. Do y'all hear Frank? I don't hear him. I don't know if that's my internet.
The same thing happened. I don't even know what's going on. So,
okay.
Let me just call it. So, we have a continent, right, that gave us everything. We have a continent that can feed the entire black race in the world. And that is why Gaddafi noticed it. And the moment Gaddafi began to work with the African in the diaspora, they said, no, it is time for you to go, because it was said by our forefather, their forefather, that Negro unity was a threat. Let's continue.
All right. So picking up with the Basic Unity Program, the program of the Organization of Afro-American Unity shall evolve from 5 strategic points which are deemed basic and fundamental to our Grand Alliance. Through our committees, we shall proceed in the following general areas. 1, restoration. In order to enslave the African, it was necessary for our enslavers to completely sever our communications with the African continent and the Africans that remained there. In order to free ourselves from the oppression of our enslavers, then it is absolutely necessary for the Afro-American to restore communications with Africa. Absolutely necessary. Absolutely necessary. And everything that the oppressor has done to put us in the conditions that we're in, we're supposed to restore what existed before that, or do the opposite of that. If unity is looked at as a threat and a danger to their power, then they're going to cause division. So what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to create unity, not feed into the strategy or adopt the strategy of division. And this is what I see with a lot of people from our communities. That's why it drives me crazy when people who are in the diaspora attack Africans, and Africans who are on the continent attack Africans in the diaspora. It's like, what are you guys doing? and what is this based on? What is this based on? Feelings, opinions, right? Nothing material from it, right? There's no material reason, I should say. But the Organization of Afro-American Unity will accomplish this goal by means of independent national and international newspapers. All right. So we're talking about program. These are things we should be doing. And in this day and age, right? Oh, well, let me finish that. Independent national and international newspapers, publishing ventures, personal contacts, and other available communications media. So when we talk about the other available communications media, it shows how it's still relevant, because no matter what the innovations are, whatever those available communication medias are, this is what we'll use to accomplish this goal. See, still the relevancy is still there. We Afro-Americans must also communicate to one another the truth about American slavery and the terrible effects it has upon our people. We must study the modern systems of slavery in order to free ourselves from it. We must search out all the bare and ugly facts without shame, for we are still victims, still slaves, still oppressed. Our only shame is believing falsehood and not seeking the truth. We must learn that we must learn all that we can about ourselves. We will have to know the whole story of how we were kidnapped from Africa, how our ancestors were brutalized, dehumanized, and murdered, and how we are continually kept in a state of slavery for the profit of a system conceived in slavery, built by slaves, and dedicated to keeping us enslaved in order to maintain itself. We must begin to re-educate ourselves and become alert listeners in order to learn as much as we can about the progress of our motherland, Africa. We must correct in our minds the distorted image that our enslaver has portrayed to us of Africa, that he might discourage us from reestablishing communications with her and thus obtain freedom from oppression. And I'll read this last part, reorientation. In order to keep the Afro-American enslaved, it was necessary to limit our thinking to the shores of America, right? That's when you have these people who identify with America and being American, then they identify with their ancestors, right? Their ancestral homeland of Africa. We need reorientation. We need re-education. So to prevent us from identifying our problems with the problems of other people of African origin, this made us consider ourselves an isolated minority without allies anywhere. The Organization of Afro-American Unity would develop in the Afro-American people a keen awareness of our relationship with the world at large and clarify our roles, rights, and responsibilities as human beings. We can accomplish this goal by becoming well-informed concerning world affairs, understanding that our struggle is part of a larger world struggle of oppressed peoples against all forms of oppression. We must change the thinking of the Afro-American by liberating our minds through the study of philosophies and psychologies, cultures and languages that did not come from our racist oppressors. Provisions are being made for the study of languages such as Swahili, Hausa, and Arabic. These studies will give our people access to ideas and histories of mankind at large, and thus increase our mental scope. We can learn much about Africa by reading informative books and by listening to the experiences of those who have traveled there. But many of us can travel to the land of our choice and experience for ourselves. The Organization of Afro-American Unity will encourage the Afro-American to travel to Africa, the Caribbean, and to other places where our culture has not been completely crushed by brutality and ruthlessness, right? And oh man, so well, Frank, I'll let you add if you wanted to speak to any of that.
I mean, pretty much, Malcolm X, it kind of explained itself, just from reading it. But what I want to add here is, just a question again. What is written in here? Is it anything that would make, what a CIA or FBI, or even the American government to go against such a man? This man is literally said about just learning our history. Just how the Jewish will not forget, the so-called Jewish will not forget about the so-called Holocaust that was caused to them, according to them, by Adolf Hitler. They never forget it, right? It is the same way Malcolm X just said in his video. We should not forget. Let us learn our history to unite us. But again, all right? The colonizer, the capitalist, they know that our history, it is something that they did to us. Our history, okay, it is something that will identify them as the problem. Oh, but the thing here is they have no issue identifying Arthur Hitler, okay, as an enemy, but they have issues we identifying the colonizer, the enslaver, as an enemy. So they saw Malcolm X in a sense as an enemy because Malcolm X, okay, is trying to expose them, is trying to educate his people. Just how today, just from these articles, what we read about Malcolm X, let me get an example in this current time about Abraham Traore. What Abraham Traore is doing currently in Burkina Faso, it is what exactly Malcolm X wanted. All right, it is what exactly Malcolm X spoke about. And today, okay, today, Washington, D.C., Europe, they have seen Abraham Traore as a threat, okay, as an enemy. What he's doing, they have posed anything as an enemy. But what he said that we are going to take our resources. We are not going to allow anybody to change the narrative, to get us a narrative that they want to give us about us. We know about us. We're going to identify, we're going to explain about us, and we're going to take our land. We are not going to allow anyone to come and take our resources to their land. We are going to take our resources and make it into finished product and then sell it to who we want to sell it to. Is that a bad thing? But today, Abraham Traore, in the eyes of Europe and America, he is the West government.
Indeed. So I think like it's important for us to like study this program. You have access to it now, and it's online. Study this program and see, you know, how we can develop programs through the framework that is laid out here. So we should be thinking about how to develop when we're developing programs. Is there aspects of it that is going to touch on bringing unity, right, between Africans in the diaspora and on the continent, and you know, whether we're in the Caribbean, the United States, Europe, and so forth. In our program, is it reorienting us towards Africa if we're in the diaspora, right? And if we're on the continent, reorienting us to our past, our history, Sankofa, right? Because colonial education can disconnect us, even if we're on the continent, from our ancestors and from our own culture and traditions. So these are things that we have to keep in mind as we're developing programs. Restoration, is our program restoring relations between Africans, no matter where we are, which was disrupted as a result of colonialism and slavery, right? So, and there's other things in the program, as you can see, education. I think there's security is the aspect of this program that touches on security. So I think that, you know, we have to not just study it, but find out how we can apply this information to the current situation that we're in. Because as African people, we're still dealing with colonialism, whether it's in the form of neo-colonialism. We're still dealing with slavery, whether it's wage slavery or even, you know, human trafficking that still exists as a result of colonial conditions, colonial capitalism. So with that being said, man, I appreciate everybody for tapping in. Again, tomorrow is Malcolm X Day, Born Day number 99. Next year is going to be Born Day 100. We really going to do it big. But I think like even with these part of these commemorations, right, is to uplift the legacy of Malcolm X and his spirit, but it's also to get us to remember who Malcolm is and what he stood for, because, you know, we should be not just celebrating the man, but putting into practice the ideas, because the fight is still on. The struggle for independence, the struggle for sovereignty, that's still on. The struggle to end colonialism is still on. So it's not celebrating because of a victory. It's commemorating Malcolm and letting them know that we haven't forgotten, you know, and we're still out here fighting. So that's our objective. So with that being said, I'm going to end it with Malcolm, and we'll be back here next Saturday, hopefully, if schedule permits. But we're going to be starting on a new book. We haven't decided yet, so stay tuned for what that new book is going to be. But appreciate you guys. As always, make sure you like and share and subscribe to the channel.
Malcolm, just are you prepared to go into the United Nations at this point and ask that charges be brought against the United States for its treatment of American Negroes?
Oh, yes. Number one, of the black man in America is beyond America's ability to solve. It's a human problem, not an American problem or a Negro problem. And as a human problem or a world problem, we feel that it should be taken out of the jurisdiction of the United States government and the United States courts.
We want freedom by any means necessary. We want justice by any means necessary. We want equality by any means necessary. We don't feel that in 1964, living in a country that is supposedly based upon freedom and supposedly the leader of the free world, we don't think that we should have to sit around and wait for some segregationist congressman and senators and a president from Texas in Washington, D.C. to make up their mind that our people are due now some degree of civil rights. No, we want it now, or we don't think anybody should have it.